Welcome to Yesterday's Airlines, and in this video we're going to be taking a close look at a recent Aeroclassics release, the Condor McDonnell Douglas DC-10-30 D-ADPO. So Aeroclassics has got some really nice DC-10s, so this is a great opportunity to have a look at one of those. And as per usual, for all of my video reviews, we split the review into three sections. The first section is to look at the mold itself. The second section is to look at the livery, and the third section is to look at printing and quality control. And each of those sections can get a maximum score of 10 for a maximum combined score of 30. So let's get into it straight away and investigate the mold of this Aeroclassics 10. So the Aeroclassics DC-10, is it a good mold? It certainly is. It is in fact my favourite DC-10 in 400 scale by a reasonable distance, and I base most of my DC-10 fleet around it. I've probably got, I don't know, 50 or so of them. And even though I have examples of other manufacturers' DC-10s, as you can see in the background, we can take a look at, this is the nicest of the lot. So what I particularly like about this mold is the whole front fuselage and nose area. It's really nicely angled. It's got really nice nose gear as well. And as is relatively unusual in 400 scale, for the Aeroclassics DC-10, the nose gear actually comes detached and you have to put it in because there's always a risk of breakage, and that's quite a nice touch because it is quite delicate. The rest of the fuselage is equally nice. It's got some nice engines here. It's got a really nice main landing gear as well. Actually, a really nice set of wings. It's obviously a more modern slot-in wings mold, which is good. But actually, all of the DC-10 molds in this scale are anyway. And coming to the back, it's got a rather nice number 2 engine here as well. And in this particular example, it matches the correct look of the engines on this DC-10-30. There are a selection of different engine exhausts, and the AC version doesn't always match exactly correctly with the engine type or error of the 10 itself, but in this case it does. So it's actually a really class looking mold. It looks really nice. It presents beautifully, and it's got really nice engines. And you can't really see on the video here, but believe me, it is there. You can see the engine fan at the back of the number 2 engine there. It's just super hard to catch that on the video. So yeah, this is one of my favorite Aeroclassics molds. It's a really good mold. So comparing it to some of the other DC-10s that are available in this scale, let's put it over the side. Then firstly, we've got the Gemini mold, which is a good, solid, classic Gemini mold. Actually quite a nice one, but the undercarriage is a bit chunky. It's kind of its era. It's quite nice. It's got quite a decent nose section. I don't dislike this mold. It's just not quite as nicely presented as the Aeroclassics. So one of the other areas here, the rear of the engine exhaust is kind of 2-piece. It's not quite as good as what you're getting for your money with an Aeroclassics DC-10. So it's a nice mold, but it's just perhaps not quite up to the same standard. Similarly with Dragon Wings mold, again, the undercarriage is probably its biggest weakness. I don't think the nose section's quite as nice as on the Aeroclassics, but it's pretty good. One thing they do obviously have correct on the Dragon is that it's got a nice DC-10-10 wingspan, which the Aeroclassics doesn't have. In this case, this is a 30, and Aeroclassics version I'm reviewing is also a DC-10-30, so the wings are correct. Yeah, I like the Dragon 10 as well. Again, it just doesn't quite match up to the Aeroclassics. The third mold to look at here is the Witty Wings mold, which again is actually a really nice mold. It doesn't have any enormous failings. It's just not quite as nice. The engines and the way they hang off the wings is not quite as good. It's a bit too low perhaps on the Witty Wings, and overall I think the undercarriage is a little too long and it sits a little higher than it perhaps ought to. If we compare the Aeroclassics here to the Witty Wing, sorry, nose gear just fell out, then you can see it sits a little bit higher than the Aeroclassics does, which I just don't think is quite as nice. Now, if there was going to be a failing on the Aeroclassics, I think it would probably be that the number 2 engine here is a little bit tubular. It's not quite as curvy as it ought to be. That's something the Willy Wings mold actually does get quite nicely correct. You can see here it's a little bit curves in slightly here. So if there's a failing on the Aeroclassics, that's it. But for me, this DC-10-30 version of the Aeroclassics is really approaching close to perfection, and any suggestion that we need another DC-10 in 400 scale to replace this is, in my opinion, way out of line. So I think this is a 10 out of 10 mold. So on to the livery. This is obviously Condor Flugdienst, not really sure, doesn't matter. It's a beautiful classic chrome scheme, basically bare metal across the entire fuselage, probably my favourite Condor scheme of all time. This DC-10 also wore the all-over grey paint scheme, and then later on the white scheme with the grey belly. But this scheme looks the nicest of the three that it did wear, and it's a pretty simple scheme to reproduce because obviously the fuselage is just pure metal, aside from the parts which are not actually metal but are composites around the wing root there. So how has Aeroclassics done on this? They've done quite well. I mean, the fuselage is beautiful. It's a lovely, shiny chrome. It looks great. The titles are nice. We've got the DC-10 marking there. We've got the Condor logo down here, and the black nose cone is looking good as well. Something that is missing is that it should have the registration on the nose gear doors here, so it should be saying PO. It is not, so that's a mistake. Otherwise, though, looking at the engines, they've got the logo nicely done here, and the rest of the fuselage is good. So moving on to the tail, and initially it all looks good. Certainly I haven't got any problem with the colour. I think that's okay. It's got the PO at the top with the German flag, and that's all nice, and you've got the Condor logo here too. However, as always, I compare these models to real photos, and it struck me that the Condor logo actually isn't 100% correct. And this is a sort of annoying detail that I wish Aeroclassics could get right, but somehow they just don't seem able to put in the legwork to actually check enough photographs. So if you actually look at a picture of this actual aircraft, I've just got one here, you can see, if we move this a bit closer, that it should be the case that the tail of the Condor cuts off here, well above the exhaust port there. So it should be at that kind of angle. But if we look at the model itself, you'll see that it's not. The angle of the model is different. It's pointing too far down. It's pointing down here towards that, and it should actually be a bit more of an angle that way. So the Condor is too steep on the tail, so that's a little disappointing. It's not the sort of thing you notice unless you're being ultra nerdy like I am here, but it is incorrect. So I think that for the livery application, even though it's a very simple livery, they're missing the reg on the nose gear, and that is incorrect. So I think we're going to be scoring this an 8 out of 10 for them. To the stand for the final section of the review, which is looking at the printing and the quality control. As you've seen throughout this review, the nose gear keeps on falling out, but that's just because, as I said earlier, they come detached with the DC-10s, and I probably didn't put it in properly. So it's not a failing of the mold itself. This is a really nicely printed model. Printing directly onto the metal, it looks great. There's no issues in terms of print rubbing or issues like that. There's not any issues around any kind of paint marks on the engines, which has been an issue on some Aeroclassics 10s. The inside of the engines is nice and dark, so that looks good. It's obviously got a black nose cone, so you don't need to have a nose cone ring on this model, but AC doesn't put those on anyway. But you can see there's some nice detailed printing here, and overall the printing for me is very nice. No real issues for the printing on this aircraft as far as I can tell. Build quality is also great. Everything is connected, everything is in the right place, and there are no issues. So for me, this model displays really nicely, and that's getting a full marks for the printing and the quality control. Overall, a summary for this model. Basically, if you're looking for DC-10s, then Aeroclassics really are the top manufacturer for the Big 10. There are some other nice molds, as you've seen. I don't have major issues with any of the molds I showed you today, the Dragons, the Geminis, or the Woody Wings. I strongly recommend avoiding the old Phoenix Tucano line mold, which I don't own any of. That's rubbish. But all the others are okay. However, the Aeroclassics 10 for me is the best. They are beautiful models, and this one is a great example with a really attractive scheme. It's just a shame that AC are lazy as when it comes to looking at photographs of the real thing and replicating the livery. They've got an ongoing issue there, and again in this model it's not 100%. Having said that, it doesn't really have a dramatic impact on the look and feel of the model, and it scored really well. So in my opinion, it's getting a 10 for the mold, it's getting an 8 for the livery, it's getting 10 for construction. So that's 28, which is a really, really good score. And you know, this is a really nice release. They released the grey version as well a month or two earlier. I've only got this one. I'd much prefer this livery over the grey, but they're both great, and Aeroclassics is reliable and solid when it comes to DC-10. So I like I say, strongly recommend them. So there we go, another great model, really nice release. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you do, please like it and subscribe to the channel as always. Keep checking out Yesterday's Airlines for more content just like this and all the upcoming news on releases and especially on molds. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.